This is CRM Audio, the Microsoft Dynamics CRM podcast, with George Doubinski, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean, the CRM Hobbit Tabor.
CRM Audio, the Dynamics CRM podcast, is sponsored by KingswaySoft. They offer robust error handling and superior performance to streamline your development process and increase productivity. Their dynamic CRM tools simplify integration development work with easy-to-use development and scheduling processes. With their SSIS toolkit, your data integration can happen quickly and automatically so you don't have to worry about out-of-date records. The ultimate goal of the toolkit is to simplify data integration development work. By utilizing SSIS as your data integration platform, you can take advantage of the flexibility and power of SSIS ETL engine, which enables integration with virtually any application or data source that you may need to work with. We thank KingswaySoft for their support of CRM Audio.
Welcome, gentlemen. How are you doing this morning?
Doing well.
Outstanding.
Evening. Yes.
That strange voice you hear is the return of Captain Redlaces. How are you doing, Redlaces?
I'm doing great. I've had my New York bagel this morning, and I'm ready to go.
What is a New York bagel?
A New York bagel is basically a carbohydrate bomb that they sprinkle with garlic and salt and sesame and anything else they sweep up off the kitchen floor.
Is a real New York bagel hard, or is a real New York bagel soft and chewy?
Yes. The outside of it should be crunchy, and the inside should like gum up your teeth. It's the contrast between the two.
Should one toast a New York bagel?
Yeah, I choose to toast them. Yes. I actually my preferred bagel is split, scooped and toasted. Scooped means that they scoop out the bready part. So I really like the crusty part because I guess
you have like
kind of reflects
It sort
my
of
personality.
reminds me of muffin tops.
Then do you fill in the hollowed out part with like toppings?
Yeah, a schmear of cream cheese.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Do people like buy the scooped out part then, so they can sell the same bagel twice?
That's why I mentioned muffin tops.
That's right. Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think the goodness is all on the outside.
Yes.
Coming soon to your grocery store near you. Scott's Bagel Scoops.
Remnants.
All right, so George, I hear you've been going to Parts Unknown for training. Can you give us a hint?
In about 10 days, I'm off to India. But that's
okay. Which part?
Bangalore, or Bengaluru, should I say?
Okay.
More interesting and exciting was an offer I received this morning to go and train people in Palestine, of all places.
Okay.
Hey, nice. I did a project in Ramallah a few years back.
Which part of Palestine is that? I didn't quite investigate which part of Palestine, but when I go to Australian government travel advice site and it says in red letters, "Do not travel," I kind of lost all the interest in training.
Yeah. No, Ramallah is just right outside of Jerusalem, just a short bus ride and two security checkpoints away. So, yeah.
Now with India, the part I always have trouble understanding is what name format to use, because depending on who you are and what part of India you come, you may use your given name first. You may use your family name first. So when I talk to someone I never know, should I call them by the first name or what we interpret as their last name?
Well, but it's always been a challenge. I mean, every implementation in one of the Asian countries is a challenge in this regards, because notion of the first and last name doesn't quite map in most of the countries, I have to say. Beginning with China, where for simplicity's sake, we assume it's reversed. But as far as I know, it's a bit more complicated than that. Look, it's a mess. Like, I know, say, we use, or I use, there's equivalent of a middle name, but it's preset. It's derivative of your father's name. So it's like George, son of. So, and it's middle name and it's given. So there's no like 3 or 4 middle names. And then we have Spanish, or Spaniards, so Spanish speaking, where they can have multiple surnames.
Right.
Though they don't
we've
treat
had this
it like
conversation
that.
before.
Yeah, we did have it. It's like deja vu all over the place.
And so you'll be sharing with them your tip about how to get rid of the first name field, I imagine.
No, because it's not CRM training per se. It's ADX Studio.
Oh wow! Okay.
So
okay, great.
People doing implementation looking forward. They've got obviously they do have CRM for the customers. A lot of them on premises, as I found. It looks like in India a lot of on-premises deployments.
Yeah, it seems that way. I don't know how established the CRM online data centers there are, but yeah, I think there are a lot.
Well, there is a new one in India which went online like a couple months ago.
Yeah, about a month ago, I think.
About a month ago. So.
That'd be great. Take some pictures.
I will.
Post some pictures of Indian locations with the CRM tip of the day or CRM audio logos.
It's always a challenge. Like when you go to unknown places, how you guys choose? Like the options are, I can choose an absolutely unknown hotel, which looks kind of okay, but internet's Photoshop. It's but it's like 15 minutes from the place where the training is gonna be, or I can settle on known quantity, like really good hotel, but it's 30 minutes away without traffic, which translates probably to 1 hour each way every day. So. And I
usually rely on the guidance of my client, especially when you're going to some of those areas that may have some parts that may be dangerous or something like that. And making sure that you get to your training alive is an important thing.
I suppose.
And going with a known quantity, at least you have one variable that you can depend on that's going to be good. You know what I mean? So if you have
but the other one is guaranteed to be bad.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, it's the other one may be twice as good, but the known quantity, where at least you have a minimal level of what you're getting,
right,
can be good. But if you're adventurous, I think I'm a big fan when I go someplace of finding something local to do or some experience that I can see, some strange food I can bring back for my kids to experiment on them with, that type of thing.
I would probably, strange food is the last thing I would try in India.
Yes.
It's kind of...
All right. So,
but looking forward to it. Yeah, it's one of the advantages of, part-time as a trainer and creating training materials.
Right. And to my kids, strange food is some kind of candy, like a flavor of Kit Kats they don't sell here. I got one in Japan when I was there last year that had some kind of bean. It was some kind of bean Kit Kat. It was very disgusting. I actually got them to eat it.
You didn't get the green tea one?
I did. The green tea ones are actually pretty good. So, Mr. Hobbit,
yes, sir.
Had you recently learned something about the migration path from Field 1 Sky to the field service solution.
Right. So with the Spring Wave, the field service component is no longer Field 1 Sky. It's field service. It's completely incorporated within the product. And as such, all of the schema has been changed. So there's no more F1_ prefix. It's all MSDYN, just as if it was any other function in CRM. But with that poses some definite challenges. There's not a direct upgrade path from Field 1 Sky to field service. So if you're a customer who has a full implementation where you have everything from work orders to equipment and invoicing connected to your ERP and the like. You have a significant effort ahead of you to move to the field service solution. What Microsoft is going to provide is you can get a mapping documents that provide how to get from the Field 1 Sky out of the box to the field service out of the box fields for roughly 80 plus entities. So you have 80 CSV files. They're also working on a scribe package and scribe only, not SSIS, just scribe, as that's the endorsed provider, the integration provider. So if you have custom objects or customizations to those now out of the box entities, you have to take that into consideration when you're looking at that mapping. Also, any kind of business rules, workflows, plugins, integrations that connect to the out of the box Field 1 Sky or customized fields and entities from your Field 1 Sky implementation. Those also have to be looked at and reviewed to understand completely how that's going to move over. So while there's a lot of great features and functionality in the new field service, if you're not ready to go full bore into a project to move from Field 1 Sky and do that complete migration, this may be the opportune time to do some evaluation of the full field service product, understanding what they pulled out of the Field 1 Sky components. Some of the objects were deleted, and some of the attributes, all the schema actually has been changed. So it would be good for an analysis period and to understand really what that impact is going to be on your organization.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense to me, because if you've got, it makes sense that you would want to make standard entities instead of a prefix like F1, and as a result, there's not an automatic kind of upgrade option. I can understand too if you're a client and you especially if you implemented Field 1 recently,
right,
once the news of Microsoft's acquisition came out, that then seeing there's no easy migration, I can understand that'd be a little bit painful. But such are the things that happen from time to time, and ultimately there's a little bit of a hubbub about them initially, and then that dies down, and you have the people who have it upgrade or don't upgrade, and then everybody else gets the new solution. So I can imagine there's going to be a similar kind of weirdness period with ADX once the new solution comes out as well, because there are ADX entities that aren't coming forward to the new portal solution for CRM Online.
And one other item to note, the solution that was provided for online, where you could pull it down from the admin center, that Field 1 Sky solution base and the patch cannot be installed in the same environment as the new field service solution. So in order to do this migration, if you're online, you'll need to spin that to a new org.
So you can't have both of them installed at the same time?
No. So you're gonna have to go have the field service in a separate org, make your do your analysis and your data migration, and then essentially pull out Field 1 from your production and bring in field service with the data. It's quite a effort.
Yeah, I can see that pretty much eliminates the ability to do a really seamless transition between the two.
Right.
Because you've at some point got to rip and replace.
Yep.
You use another org, move it over, but at some point you've got to remove the solution from your production environment, add the new one, and then run your migration, which isn't the end of the world, and you can schedule it over a weekend or whatever. But if you've got a lot of tickets in there, you've got a lot of field service data, that could be a little bit disruptive, especially to a very busy organization. But
so I'm hoping that there'll be improvements in the tools in the near and short term.
That could be really challenging, because if those records are related to contacts and related to companies inside of CRM, then if you want to move it into a trial environment to get to stand it up in the new schema, you have to have all those contacts and all those accounts, et cetera, in the new schema.
Yeah.
It sounds like you almost want to just, instead of putting it in the new schema, you want to pull it to a local database where you're not constrained by that, and then push it back up.
Yeah, and every work order essentially will be associated to at least an account, and quite often a contact as well. So yeah, it's
I can already
not a small effort.
I can already hear my consulting directors going, I need an estimate just for a real straightforward one.
Yeah.
Can you do it in 2 weeks? Can you get it done?
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
that may be me calling.
That might be you calling me for that.
Yeah.
So speaking of changes, Redlaces and I were chatting yesterday, and he asked me about the feedback entity. Have you gentlemen seen the feedback entity in CRM 2016 Update 1?
No, not yet.
George?
Yes. Have you watched the video?
Yes, I did. I did watch the video, and I understand. In some places it makes more sense than others, but from a pure CRM standpoint, what is the minimum and maximum value really good for? It feels more like a feedback configuration entity than an actual somebody sitting down and entering feedback.
Yeah.
Look, to me, I haven't played.
Now you're on the hook to defend it. Now you've already said you looked at the video, so you got to defend this design.
The videos, I mean, CRM tip of the day video that Derek's been putting together about voice of the customer. So imagine you collecting data from your survey. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now you have a choice. So basically, imagine that your survey has certain fields and certain responses in those fields. Okay. So if your survey changes a lot, like you adapt it, you change it, you do A/B testing, then collecting responses in any fixed format is challenging. The best you can do is collect kind of field value collections, right? But reporting on field value collections is very difficult, as you know, because you don't have preset fields. You don't know what they are. Is field going to be there? Field could be in one response, but not in another one, and so forth. But you collecting all the data and you have flexibility. But now imagine you've got a survey which pretty much fixed in time, like you collecting, well, guess what? Feedback from the customer about customer service. Once you establish what you want to ask people about, you are not going to change it, at least not too often. In that instance, you can actually create an entity that would give you this field value, but then you can use the full power of CRM, field data types, and so forth. You can report, you can collate, you can push it into Power BI, you can chart it, and so forth. But it requires more rigid structure. So that's the feedback. So effectively, when you enable feedback, you setting up an entity to collect your responses, but the format is more or less fixed. So you use feedback when responses do not change, when your survey structure doesn't change over the time. If your survey needs to be flexible, then you collect survey responses.
Right.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think a feedback entity like that makes sense for for a survey. I think it makes sense even for things like knowledge base articles where I've got one record that multiple people through the KB or ESS interface are providing feedback, and having a minimum maximum value to say it's a 1 to 10 scale. There it makes sense. But if you don't enable voice of the customer on all these out of the box entities like contacts, feedback is there and you can't disable it. Now you can turn it off in people's security roles, but that's where from CRM, if I go to feedback and hit a new feedback, me populating a minimum value and a maximum value per feedback record doesn't make a lot of sense unless I really want to put in my feedback about Scott's contact record. If I want to say he's a lousy person or something, then maybe I can see the value in that. But I see the purpose, but I don't see the purpose of from the CRM UI having users create feedback records and providing the minimum and maximum value each time.
Yeah, it's just when you look at it and you try to fill it in, there's a real confusion as to why it is what it is in there. I mean, if it were just a collection point for data from voice of the customer, maybe that would be one thing, but to expose it on every record seems a bit squirrely.
It feels like a back-end configuration entity or a back-end collection point type entity versus something you would have a user actually interact with the form. Maybe if there was a dialogue, you kind of like you got in, Edge browser or Microsoft Office, provide feedback, where I could on a product record or a knowledge base article click a button and give it 4 stars and say this is a terrible article. I like that, but I'm just the point of confusion is, and maybe there's maybe foundational for things yet to come too.
Perhaps have you looked at mobile representation of the entity? Maybe it's got some smiley faces or stars or some other dials.
There's the starring thing in mobile. I thought about that too. We're speculating about things we don't really know about.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we always do?
The documentation, the information so far has been released is fairly. It's kind of like, click here to put a value here for the minimum value and put a value here for the maximum value, but it really gives no explanation as to why you're describing that.
42.
Yeah, 42. There you go. I agree. So
maybe we should provide some feedback to Microsoft about the feedback entity.
Excellent.
All right, so Scott, you had an update last time you were here. You were talking about Power BI and using it with CRM, and if I remember right, you saw the value in it, but the experience was less than desirable, such as taking a very long time to complete your queries of CRM, that type of thing. Right. You've since invested a fair amount of time in beefing up on this and some of the new stuff from Microsoft. What have you found?
Well, I mean, I actually went back and listened to what I said back then, and I was so full of non-knowledge at that point. But I've got a lot more experience under my belt now. I've made a lot more mistakes in the meantime, so I have experience to speak from in some of this. But the product has continued to evolve. On the Power BI side, it quickly is evolving. They're continuing. They're still maintaining their cadence of once a month releases of the desktop product, and I think even weekly updates to the online product. It's kind of a blistering pace. They have released, I think it's there are now 3 different CRM effectively sort of templates available for Power BI. 2 of them are in the content pack store. One's a sales-oriented one, and one's a service-oriented one. Those are content packs that you can point to a CRM instance, and as long as you can authenticate to it, it will attempt to pull that information into Power BI and display it into a set of pre-built graphs. So pretty nice examples to see what it could look like. There's some downsides to that, but that's okay because we'll try to address those. What I find is challenging with those is that they're somewhat fixed data sets. They're built off the out-of-the-box entities. And so if you're using out-of-the-box entities and you're not using any custom fields or custom entities, and you're using all those pieces, then you're good to go. But if you have any custom entities or custom fields that you want to include in your dashboards, that content pack is not for you.
You can't extend it at all, or
not at all. It is a nice example of how you can do things. The challenge I have a little bit with it is that the way that this is a Power BI thing, not a CRM thing, but the content pack, the formulas used to calculate those values or the measures in the content pack are not visible. So if you want to look at how they constructed the DAX, or even to tweak the DAX a little bit so that you could adjust what gets filtered into the report, that's not possible currently in the content packs that are online.
Can't you pull them using Power BI Desktop?
I haven't found a way. Maybe you can, but I haven't found a way to grab that content pack and bring it into a Power BI desktop.
Okay.
Tell me if you find otherwise, because I would be all over that. But at this point,
I'm more interested in the other side of things, or downside of things that you cannot impersonate. I think there are some movements in the area. Can you do you know anything new?
No, you pretty much provide authentication to it, and whatever you authenticate as, that's what that dashboard is going to look like. So it's kind of,
there's no data filtering.
No, not in this environment. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's part of my challenge. The other part of the challenge, which is kind of alludes to what you just described there, George, is that inside of, and this may never change, I don't know, but inside of CRM, we've got a pretty complex security model. In fact, it's actually sometimes a little overly complex at times, where you can, if there's a given record that Sean's created, and Sean shared it with Joel, and it's attached to a record owned by George, those are three different vectors that would say whether or not I should have permission to see that record, right? So, a lot of different ways in which you can choose to see whether whether a user in CRM can see a specific record. When you pull it out through the OData feed or extract it out to a local data store, you really lose that granularity of security. So when you're planning Power BI dashboards, you're really thinking in terms of broad system-wide access to what's the data in there. So you're looking at, not necessarily specific records, but large aggregates of records. I think that's where Power BI is going to be it's going to lean that way, whereas SSIS reports that we have will lean towards the more granular approach, and where when you query it, it checks to see who is querying the data and returns only records that user is allowed to see. So that's
now, Scott. You had what I must say was the most gruesome demo I've ever seen the other day. You took the crime statistics from New York and correlated them by location and time of day.
Yeah.
And, I gotta say it was very impressive. The amount of data that you took in there and were able to show and tell a story, and found some interesting findings. But it was, it was probably the most gruesome demo. I've never seen a demo that had so many people die in it.
Well, I've seen some demos where people died just metaphorically, though. I've been one of those, but no, it was the CRM. The New York City has an open data initiative, really from back in Mayor Bloomberg's days, and I can grab crime statistics, basically localized to my neighborhood, and find out what time of day crimes have taken place and felonies of what time of day, day of week, type of felony. And I took that information and then joined it to Azure has there's a weather service, and so you can a weather feed where you can point to a weather location and get like minimum, maximum temperature and precipitation for the day. And so I took all that and correlated it and found that as the weather gets hot, you're more likely to get killed. So people get a lot more stabby in the heat and the humidity, I think.
And what was the time of day you found the most robberies? Was it like afternoon after the
Yeah,
kids
it's right
got
after school gets out. So 3 o'clock, everybody gets released from school. I don't know if that correlates to all the kids running out of school with their iPhones and backpacks filled with electronics, that's the cause of it, or if we just have a lot of thuggish kids. Probably a combination. Not to be harsh, but it was fun to correlate that data. And again, it's just shows the power of looking at data sets and watching it over time, time of day, day of week. So really, if you really want to explore the city in pure safety, it's like 4 a.m. on a Tuesday. You're least likely to be you're safest in the city.
in the wintertime.
In the wintertime, yes.
So what is the, how does that correlate to CRM? I'm still trying to understand a typical CRM deployment. Who has data that's that time sensitive that they want to see either time or geographically, that granular data?
Yeah, I'm not. It's going to depend on the type of customer that they are. Especially if it's a very short cycle sales process where you're doing telesales, or maybe a customer service thing where they're consumer focused, or if they want to look at a larger trending over time to say, looking at temperature shifts and say, or I don't know, there could be any number of factors that may be influencing your sales or your call volume that would be helpful. Even without trying to go outside of CRM data, in the last 2 weeks, I was pulling down copies of our own internal CRM system. I pulled out all the audit logs for opportunity products. We're using cases, and we also have a project entity and project task entity within ours as a service organization. And I pulled out all the audits of those, as well as also pulled out all the activities and notes and user posts from the post. And I looked at that and graphed it over time to watch as different people took leadership of our organization, behavior within the CRM shifted as a result. And you could see the results of different initiatives coming into play as they played out in the behavior in CRM, just looking at that activity over time. Also, one of the things that was unusual about it is I pulled out all this audit data and I started looking at it at a field level changes, how often a certain field changes, and found that there was an integration job that was hitting our audit tables a couple of times a minute occasionally, and putting in all these unnecessary updates to the audit because this integration job was written in a way that, even if the value was 0, it would go ahead and update it to 0, and that would trigger an audit, and it was filling our audit logs. So doing that, I was able to find, I also found a workflow that was still owned by an individual. And so that individual looked like they were doing a ton of work, but in fact, it was actually a workflow that was firing for them. So it was really interesting to pull that out and graph it.
To look like I'm busy.
Well, yeah. Okay. I didn't call you out, but yeah, it was your workflow. So
yeah, that's how I show up at the top of the activity log all the time.
That's right. But it's been an interesting piece. I'm also building one for we have a initiative around insurance, and that's a customer I'm currently working with. And we're looking at trying to figure out patterns of usage for different salespeople, and looking at graphing within CRM data against exposing it through Power BI, and aggregating very large data sets. Within CRM, you can pull a dashboard or a graph of 50,000 records. Pretty, I guess, that's kind of topping out is what's performant. And especially if you're online. But if you want to look back over 2 or 3 years worth of activities, that's not going to happen. So CRM data plus Power BI, I've been able to take that, and now within the spring 2016 release, then turn around and expose those dashboards of activity levels within CRM, within a CRM dashboard. So within the spring update, you just go to the dashboard, and where you have a choice of what type of thing you're going to put in that cell of the dashboard, you now have a Power BI icon. And so you can point to that Power BI icon and expose that data. Works really nicely.
Nice. Thanks for the update, Scott.
Excellent.
Looking forward to what's coming. It's just mind blowing how fast things are.
Yeah,
things are changing.
I think last week I think Sean mentioned there is a Power BI dashboard that is basically provided as a Power BI template, or a file you can download to the desktop. And George, may be more like what you're describing. That one is hosted, I think, on GitHub. It's one that's oriented towards sales, and it is something you can pull down and modify and look at what's the underlying DAX under each entity or each measurement, and it works really nicely. I was actually on the beta for that team, and we spent a lot of time looking at it and trying to figure out find gaps where, especially if you have a company that has a different start date for the fiscal year other than January 1st. Looked at that; it was pretty good. It's a nice example template that you can use to then steal ideas from and build your own if you want to. But it does assume that you have SQL access to the data, to CRM. So if you're a CRM online, it's assuming that you're going to connect it to a local replica of that data before you expose the Power BI dashboard.
So George, you were saying you're preparing some training on customer service stuff. So how do you train people how do you approach this in the brave new world where things change so frequently?
I guess I'll go with the boring answer, saying we're doing our best. How you eat the elephant, one piece at a time. So
now, are your training classes they're usually people from a variety of different companies and different customers?
We start in next week, in fact, on Dynamics Learning Portal. There's 4 customer service tracks: pre-sales, architect, consultant, and developer. They have a lot in common, but then at some point in time they do split, and you study different things. The courses are booked out. Like, we've got literally, I don't remember, like hundreds people who planning to attend. It's virtual, so they booked out, but we will be repeating them. I hope to schedule some probably for some September timeframe or something like that. We'll see how we go in on this one. But yeah, it's difficult. Look, we just didn't have enough time to even dig in and sort of investigate. The most difficult part is that we didn't have enough time to do any real deployments, because as you guys know, the real knowledge is acquired when you're doing real things, right? So you can play as much as you want, but you're never going to simulate real life scenarios in your head. It's really interesting example I've got, that real life is much more interesting than you can ever imagine. And you know how we always struggle to come up with the sample names. We settle on John Doe and Jim Smith and so forth.
It might fall back Jim Glenn in the old.
Jim Glenn or something like this. And when we started a few years back, when we started hosting, obviously we have people coming in with the users and so forth. And I thought, gee, how I'm going to handle, when I was writing some code, how I'm going to handle duplicates. You know what? We don't have a single one. In fact, I think we have only one Smith so far. Like the people's names in real life are much more exciting and interesting than we could ever imagine. The same goes for deployments. Real life scenarios would be much more interesting and challenging. And until we do those, until we implement, until we kind of stumble over the little things that will get in the way of real deployments, we are not going to acquire experience. And without that experience, it's extremely difficult to do effective training. Because training is, you're speaking from the experience, right? And if you don't have any, your experience is limited to kind of poking around.
Right.
Then it's really challenging how you teach people. All you can do is to teach the basics, which are kind of based on your experience, and then perhaps talk about new things and speculate, as we just did for about 20 minutes about feedback and what it's there for. Pretty much, it's kind of, it goes the same way.
Well, what I find is in advising, say, new consultants these days, is it is very difficult to get them training on some of the, what I consider the basics of CRM, because it seems like a lot of the training materials around sales, marketing, customer service focus on the new stuff. You can get a lot of stuff about SLAs. You can get a lot of stuff about entitlements. You can get a lot of stuff about field service. But when you look for a core activity management updated training video or core quote management or something like that, it's really hard to get a I'm thinking back to the old, even what the book we participate in, like the CRM Field Guide, or going back further. I was in Daniel Kai's office at Kingsway Soft last week when I was in Toronto, and in one office, we've all got the bookshelf that has the ancient books on it. It had what looked to be a pristine, brand new copy of Mike and Jim's Working with CRM 4.0 book, still there on the shelf. But that book had probably the best chapter ever written on workflows. And that's the kind of thing that, I think with all the new stuff, how do you tell somebody where to start?
I think the interactive help will be,
Helpful.
Helpful, yeah. I was going to say game changer, but I didn't want to go to these extremes. But I was just talking to the customer yesterday, and who very experienced in general, like my customers, doctor, so it's got PhD and so forth, so very educated, well-versed person, not in CRM, but in general, in science and life, so smart. So they don't have any problems kind of grasping the concepts of customizing, doing little things themselves, adding fields and so forth. And then I spent 15 minutes just walking through the forms they created, and I explained to them that saying, okay, guys, when you select this one, it would be a good idea to hide this field, show this quick view form. And the response was, oh, We didn't know it's even there. How does it work? And so forth. So for them, if they had this little prompt coming at the right time, they would explore it definitely. They didn't know what to look for because they didn't know what to look for.
But the guided help is great for the user interface and users finding things they don't know are there. Is that going to extend into the customization menu?
Well, you well, it's up to you. I'm not sure.
I don't know if could I put it on the workflow designer if I wanted to?
You could create your own.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there is anything out of the box, but you can definitely extend it and create your own.
It would need to have the 500 option flow chart that you had.
Yeah, it's a bit challenging to creating those things is definitely challenging. Yeah.
Right. So before we go, Scott, you had a tool recommendation for this week, I believe.
Yeah. So, I mean, going back to what I was working on earlier, what I mentioned earlier that I focused on is it's in the XRM toolbox. There's an audit center, and I was using that once I found in looking at my audit logs, I found a couple of things that were being audited that didn't need to be audited, just kind of pointless. They somehow got audited quickly, or got audited originally and no longer in use. What I did is I went to the audit center, and real quickly across entities, you can pick entities that you want to audit, or you can pick entities and remove things that you don't want to audit. The nice thing is it saves a ton of little clicks because you can go to it and quickly grab a bunch of attributes and either enable or disable them. One of the nice pieces that I found was that you can go to an entity, effectively remove click on it to clear all the attributes and say, I don't want to audit any of these. But before you commit that, you click on the add and say, show me only the entities that are on the forms, and it will only display those. And you can say, select those. And then your audit is really tied to what have you put on your forms anywhere. So it was a really nice utility to get through a bunch of things that you could do kind of tiny click by tiny click, but it surfaced it in a really easy to use format, as well as gave you a little intelligence about what you choose to audit.
How often do you think people get that granular and say, don't audit these fields, audit these other fields?
Not enough.
I tell you one thing. Guess what I was using yesterday?
What's that?
The same tool.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that. We had a situation at the customer where a bunch of records gone AWOL, and I did my own audit, and I discovered they don't have audit on. So I said, why don't you have it on? Why don't we enable it? And what we enable it on? And I thought there must be something in XRM Toolbox. So I went there, found the center, and yes, that was a time saver, huge time saver. I said, these entities, yep, makes sense. These. The only thing I found, it's probably a bug. You know that you can't switch on audit on activity entity, which is not a real entity, but you can select it in audit center. And if you do that, when you try to apply it, it just it chokes.
Same thing for the version number field. There's a field called version number.
Oh,
and
yes.
You want to exclude that one, but that's not a field that would be, there's no business value to understanding what the changes to the version number field are. On the record. So,
but other than that, look, it was a huge time saver.
Yeah.
And I totally agree that people are not selective enough,
right,
in their audits.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, what you just mentioned a second ago, just being able to open it up and quickly see a list of what's being audited, and then click on each one of those entities and see what the list of the fields are. As a implementer or as an advisor to a customer, that ought to be a very quick thing I'm going to be doing. I will be doing. So, especially as I'm starting to leverage the audit logs as a source for my utilization or not user adoption dashboards I'm doing in Power BI. By the way, have you talked about the user adoption dashboard or the user dashboards that came in the spring update?
No, we haven't.
Oh, dude, those are cool.
What is it?
It's if you go to the list of dashboards, there is a dashboard that gives you a visualization of how many updates, changes, deletes have taken place over the last 2 hours, 24 hours, and 4 days, I think, or 2 weeks, something like that. It's a quick, high-level view of changes that are going on inside of CRM from a user perspective. It's something we've been asking for a very long time.
Is it changes that the viewing user has made, or changes
overall? It's a kind of a high-level view of what users are doing inside of CRM.
What changes which users are doing?
No, it's an aggregate. It's like a graph of how many changes are taking place over time.
Do you need to have audit enabled to get that?
You do not. This is outside of audit.
What kind of records are they reporting on?
I think all.
No, I mean, what's the mechanism for aggregating this?
It's an API level call that they're doing. It's a call that it's part of their instrumentation of CRM to watch what's going on, how many people are using particular things inside of CRM, and part of a byproduct of that is they're exposing a little bit of that through a dashboard.
Hold on, I'm looking at all the dashboards: organization insights, practice management, resource management, sales, service side.
Is this a brand new environment?
No, it's upgraded. You're saying need to have brand new?
It'll be give me a second, and I will tell you organization insights. I'm struggling to remember the name of it.
Organization insight.
Is there something like
Dashboard preview is not enabled for this SOC. Please check with your admin to enable this feature.
Yeah, so check with your admin.
How do I check with myself?
Good question.
Post a message on Slack.
To yourself.
Exactly.
Actually, what I've been using on Slack lately, it's one of the latest feature. Well, latest, like a couple months. You can actually remind yourself about a message. You see a message and say, I really need to talk to this guy, or I really need to think about it. So you kind of saying, remind me again in, 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just excellent. So it just comes back. It's the same feature similar to what you have in Outlook on iOS. Yeah. You can select a message and say
schedule,
or as we say in Australia, schedule. And basically say, just send me again, pretend I didn't receive it, and send it to me again in 3 hours. Great way to being lazy.
It's the Organizational Insights dashboard. That's the one.
That's the one I don't have.
Yeah. It's showing you the most active users, or how many users are active, which are the users that are most active, and which are the users that are making the most changes over time. So it's a nice insight that's going into CRM.
This has been CRM Audio, the Microsoft Dynamics CRM podcast. You can hear previous episodes on our website, crm.audio. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at CRM Audio, or leave us a comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/CRM podcast. If you have any topic suggestions or questions that you would like for us to answer on a future episode, please drop us an email at voice@crm.audio. Special thanks to Dale Simmons for our theme music. Go check out his website, dalesimmons.com. Please join us next time on CRM Audio.